Adding a partner to a property title and mortgage, is it possible? Well, this is a question that Joel had for me this week. He asked, only my wife is listed on a property title and has the mortgage on our home that she purchased 5 years ago before we were together. We now wish to change this so both our names are on the property title and the loan. So can you add someone to your house title in Australia? You can, and in today's video, we're going to break down all the legal hurdles, the emotional considerations, and financial complexities there are when adding your partner to your property title in Australia. And a quick disclaimer, this video is general in its nature. It shouldn't be considered specific advice. If you're looking at adding a partner to the title, get in touch with our team. And for legal and taxation side of things, speak to an accountant and lawyer.
Let's start the show.
Title versus loan. Let's get one thing crystal clear before we go any further. There's a massive difference between being on the property title and being on the home loan. And sadly, this is where a lot of people get tripped up. The property title is a legal document proving you own your house. If you sell, you get a share of the profits or losses. Being on the title gives you the rights to the asset or the home itself. The home loan or mortgage. This is the debt you owe to the bank or lender. Being on the loan makes you legally responsible for making those mortgage repayments even if your name isn't on the title. See the distinction? You can have one without the other. So you can be on the home loan without being on the title. This might seem a little odd at first, but it's all about the bank protecting its investment. Let's break it down further with two scenarios most home buyers find themselves in. Scenario 1, no mortgage. If you're one of the lucky few people who own your home outright without a mortgage, congrats. You've got a lot more flexibility when it comes to adding a partner to the title. This is usually done through a transfer of title. One thing I can't stress enough is don't do the transfer yourself. A conveyancer or property lawyer is going to be your best friend here. They'll make sure the paperwork's filled out correctly, protecting both your interests. They'll also look at the different types of ownership that are available, which we'll come back to a bit later in this video. They can also investigate the costs. Things like stamp duty isn't always going to be payable if you're adding a partner to the property. You may be able to avoid paying stamp duty if you're married or in a de facto relationship, but this does vary from state to state, so get legal advice around this. Scenario 2, you have a mortgage. Okay, this is where the majority of people are going to fall. If you're still paying off your mortgage, the banks and lenders are going to get a big say in how you transfer the title. Why? Because at the end of the day, they're trying to make sure that their investment, your mortgage, is secure. Here's the general rule of thumb. If your partner isn't going to be on the loan, that means they're not legally liable for the debt, but they want to get on the title, it's not going to be possible. The bank won't consent to that.
That's not going to cut it. Try again.
Your partner will need to be both on the title and on the loan for the bank to be happy. And this is where you potentially have to refinance your loan with your partner and change it from a single loan that might just be in your name to a joint loan. And this is where it can get a little bit tricky because depending on your partner's credit history, income, and the bank's assessment of your now financial situation, it's up to the bank to say yes or no as to whether they'll allow you to transfer the loan from your current name to both you and your partner's name. The bank treats this as a brand new application, assessing the interest rates as at today. So even if you've got years and years of history of being able to make the repayments on time and not miss a beat, the banks are still obligated to reassess your home loan and look at a brand new fresh application as at today. So if you're still keen to move ahead, what are the benefits of shared ownership? Well, let's focus on the good stuff before we get to the bad. There are some major advantages to adding a partner to your property title, especially if you're both in the relationship for the long haul. Firstly, there's protection for both parties. If you're the sole owner and sadly something were to happen, your partner could be left with nothing. This is probably a good reminder that it's worth updating your will after any major events. If you've bought a property, if you've sold a property, or assets have changed hands. Regardless, share ownership through a title provides security for both parties. Secondly, there's relationship equality. For a lot of people, putting a partner on a title just formalizes the commitment as a couple. It shows the emotional and the financial contribution of both partners to your now home. The third is future financial gains. When it comes time to sell, being on the title means you both potentially share in the profits. And a quick note on fairness, how you split up those potential gains is really entirely up to you as a couple. It doesn't need to be 50-50, and even updating the title doesn't necessarily need to be in equal splits. So what type of ownership commitment should you consider? This is definitely where you want to get a lawyer involved. In general, there are two types of ownerships that you can consider. Firstly, joint ownership. Joint ownership or joint tenancy refers to two people who equally own a property. If one of those people pass away, the deceased share will automatically be passed on to the surviving owner. The second type is tenants in common. Tenants in common refers to the ownership split between two or more individuals. This is where each tenant or owner has an equal or unequal share. The tenants in common structure is more common where you're not looking at going 50-50. You might have said, well, I've put in 30% of the deposit, you've put in 70%, so therefore I'll own 30% of the property and you'll own 70%. Another key difference is when one of the owners passes away, the ownership isn't automatically transferred and will be administered according to the deceased person's will. Another quick reminder that's worth updating your will. So what are some of the downsides in transferring your partner to the title of a property? So it's not all profit share and good times. There are some other things to consider if you're looking at putting your partner on the title of your property. Firstly, pre-existing debt. If your partner doesn't have a great credit history or has a bunch of outstanding debts, this could be a problem. As I mentioned earlier, the bank is going to completely reassess your application based on you both applying in today's market. With all the interest rate increases and changes in assessment, your borrowing capacity might not be as strong today as it was a few years ago. Next consideration is relationship breakups. Listen, you don't want to get into a relationship expecting to fail, but life happens.
We were good together.
And if things turn sour, dividing a property is just another messy, emotional, and time-consuming activity. There are some legal documentation you put in case to cover yourself on this. I'll come back to that in a sec. The third item to consider and the downside are costs. If you're looking at transferring a property that you both live in, your principal place of residence, then the good news is most states have exemptions around stamp duty, so you're not going to have to pay stamp duty to transfer. Again, get legal advice on this. It depends on state to state and depends on your situation. If you're looking at transferring the ownership of an investment property you own, it's a completely different case. There could be stamp duty. There could even be capital gains tax considerations that you need to think about. If you're looking at transferring investment, it's definitely worth speaking to an accountant to get advice around this. And what would happen if you're in that unfortunate situation where maybe you're not working, you might have had kids, and the bank says no to adding your partner to the title? Again, disclaimer time, I want to reiterate that I'm not a lawyer. If you're looking at set up a binding financial agreement or a trust, you need to speak to a lawyer about the pros and cons of these. But if you can't get the loan updated, it could be worth exploring the option of a binding financial agreement. These documents are a way to outline what would happen to you if the relationship ends and what happens to both parties. You could potentially explore the option of transferring the property to a trust, but again, there's going to be stamp duty implications, so speak to a lawyer about this. Buying a trust can change the way a bank will assess your application. Or thirdly, you can just look at reassessing things later. If you're on maternity leave, for example, a pretty common one, or carer's leave, you might have had extended time off work, you might have existing debts you need to clean up. You could just be worth leaving the property as it is now and then revisiting it down the line.
Hello, old friend.
And before I wrap up, let's run through a couple other questions Joel had when he was discussing transferring his wife to the property. If it doesn't work out, can I add a parent or sibling to the title instead of my partner? The short answer to this is yes, you can, but still lending restrictions will apply. Also keep in mind the stamp duty exemptions will likely not apply because they're generally only available if you're a partner or de facto you're living together, and it's not available if it's brother and sister or a different type of relationship. So keep that in mind. The cost could be a little bit higher if you're looking at transferring to a parent or sibling. What if we're not married? Does that matter? In Australia, marital status doesn't generally impact your property rights. De facto couples have similar legal standings in most situations. Again, this isn't legal advice, so seek specific legal advice if this is your situation. My partner has a bad credit score. Are we completely out of options? Unfortunately, there's gonna be no easy fixes to this. If they have old defaults, issues from the past, it could take time to fix. It could be worth speaking to a credit repair agency. There's a lot of times I've seen defaults get removed if they've not followed the correct processes. So there's ways to fix that, or potentially help your partner build their credit score back up to get in a position to refinance in a couple of years' time. How much is stamp duty? There are stamp duty exemptions if you're buying with a spouse or de facto partner. The only caveat here is it has to be your principal place of residence, which I mentioned earlier. It's not available on investment properties. Seek out advice on this to triple check before you start the process. So you want to add your spouse to the property title? Let's quickly recap the process so it's crystal clear on what needs to be done if you want to add your partner to the title. Firstly, speak to a lawyer or solicitor and confirm the fees and charges applied. Make sure you're definitely eligible for stamp duty exemptions as there are not going to be any unforeseen costs there. Next up, speak with a mortgage broker. A mortgage broker like Hunter Galloway can check out your financial situation and make sure the bank is going to allow you to get a loan now you're looking at transferring in joint names. Thirdly, after the loan's approved, the solicitor will draw up the transfer of title papers and get it all registered. And fourthly, it's all settled. Your new loan will be set up in joint names, the title will be transferred over, and you and your partner own the property together. Now I get it, that's a lot of information to take in, and every couple's situation is unique. There's really no one size fits all answer if you're looking at transferring your property into joint names. That's where our team here at Hunter Galloway can assist. We help homeowners navigate the situation and can quickly assess what's possible in your current circumstances. We can give a free assessment if you're looking at transferring the property to both names. Hit us up at huntergalloway.com.au, and until next time, see you later.